Ohio State has been able to sleepwalk throughout most of their early season slate thus far, but the Iowa Hawkeyes are coming into the Horseshoe on Saturday afternoon, and this is the stiffest test for the Scarlet and Gray thus far in 2024.
From LA to Piscataway, all Big Ten all year long. This is Big Ten 10.
Ohio State is driving that car down the hill, and they're not even close to mashing that gas pedal right now. I think early season 2024 Ohio State is a lot like early season 2023 Michigan. I'm sure they love that comparison, by the way. Right, early in the season last year, Ohio State, or I should say Michigan, played a handful of Group of 5 teams, just like Ohio State has thus far this season, and we just didn't know how good they were early in the year. And I think that really is where Ohio State is right now. We know about their roster. We see number 4. We see Jeremiah Smith making crazy one-handed grabs, but we haven't really seen them play up to the level I think we know that they can play, because they seem a little bit bored maybe in some of these games. Maybe they're not putting up the 50 or 60 points that they are, because this is a team with a high level of drive and a high level of motivation, and they want to start playing some of those teams, and now they are going to start playing some of those teams. This Iowa Hawkeyes team has one of the best rushing attacks in all of college football. They, every single year, have one of the best defenses in the Big Ten Conference. So now we're going to start to learn some things about this Ohio State team, and they want to really prove to themselves right now that they want to start playing up to their standard, because they got maybe their biggest game of the year next week when they go to Autzen Stadium and face off against the Oregon Ducks. Let's talk about this matchup against the Iowa Hawkeyes, because if Iowa is going to keep this thing close, or if they are going to pull off this mammoth upset, 20.5-point road underdogs the Hawkeyes are coming into this game, it all starts up front. It all starts with the run game. Kaleb Johnson is second in all of FBS in rushing yards. He has put Iowa and explosive in the same sentence when it comes to the offensive side of the football, and that was a challenge considering what this team had been the last couple of years. Iowa has been able to be better up front on the offensive line, and I think that's a big part. Okay, Iowa's O-line was gelling and maybe trying to figure things out the last few years, kind of young guys really trying to step up into bigger starting roles, and now these guys are experienced. And you really have seen just how good that they can be when this is an Iowa football team that is running downhill. This can be a dangerous team. Now, it is a fairly one-dimensional attack. We'll talk about that in a minute, maybe their struggles with the passing game so far this season, but this is an Iowa rushing attack that has been popping off big-time performance after big-time performance. Now, when you're the Ohio State Buckeyes, you know that this is what you have to clue in on. You know, if you stop Iowa's run game, you're certainly getting out of there with a W. And I think a big part for Ohio State's defensive game plan, Jim Knowles' game plan against Iowa, is getting Tyleik Williams back into the lineup at defensive tackle. He was available last week for the game against Michigan State. Ryan Day sounds like he said, he was in an emergency situation. If that situation popped up, hey, we might have gone to Tyleik Williams. But, it sounds like he should be good to go for this game against the Iowa Hawkeyes. Certainly one of the better defensive tackles in all of college football up there. And that will certainly help alongside Ty Hamilton in the middle. I think another big part for the Ohio State defense is actually Caleb Downs. Beginning of the season, we saw, hey, Caleb Downs led Alabama in tackles last year. Well, if it happens with Ohio State, maybe that's not the best sign to have your defensive back, to have a safety lead the team in tackles. But Caleb Downs is a little bit different, and I think he's going to be different. He's going to continue to be different in this football game against Iowa. He's so good at playing near the line of scrimmage. He's so good at finding the football, sniffing it out, and making sure tackles every single time. I think in this game, he's almost going to act as another linebacker, because bringing him closer to the line of scrimmage does not, what the results of that are, what the cause and effect of that is, doesn't scare Iowa on the perimeter, or doesn't scare Ohio State, I should say, on the perimeter, because they have Denzel Burke, they have Davison Igbinosun, they have really good cover corners out on the outside. And then when you look at the matchup for Iowa, the wide receivers don't scare anybody, more or less Ohio State. Jacob Gill and Reese Vandersea aren't striking fear into this Ohio State secondary. I think the Buckeyes feel that they can match up pretty well man-on-man tight coverage so far. So I think that's going to be something where Kaleb is going to come to the line of scrimmage. They know that they have to contain, they have to halt this run game if they want to win and win significantly in this particular football game. Now, when you look at this on the other side of the coin, you look at this for Iowa. We know that run game. It needs to work. They've been so good at that stretch zone play where everybody's blocking down. Kaleb finds that cutback lane, and I think that they're going to look to that early and often. If they can get the defensive line for Ohio State, if they can shove them out of the way on some plays, of course, they're not going to do it on every play. If they can do it occasionally, and maybe Kaleb can find that cutback lane, get past the linebackers, if he can bust off a couple of big chunk runs in this game, that could be enough for Iowa to get down the field and put some points certainly on the scoreboard. But we know that has to be good. But I think for Iowa to continue to remain in this game against a team like Ohio State, boy, this play action needs to work. And I think you need to match up these tight ends against maybe some of these Ohio State linebackers. I think they're going to need to get that play action going, whether it's down the seam or whether it's in the flat, like it's typical Iowa football. Run the ball, play action, bootleg, get it to the guy in the flat, 6-7 yards, and let's keep on moving the chain. So Luke Lachey, Addison Estrenga, look for them to get going early. One thing I've noticed about Ohio State, early in this season, when it comes to their defensive backs, when it comes to their coverage, and we talked about this at the beginning of the preview, it's been very safe, it's been very vanilla as a team this year, and that really, when you talk about their coverage, it's been that way as well. This is coverage when you watch against Michigan State in some of these games, they're playing 8 to 10 yards off the line of scrimmage. They're playing very soft coverage right now. Now, if I'm Tim Lester, and I do see that early in this game, I'm hitting some of these slants, I'm hitting some of these comebacks. I'm hitting some of these quick out routes. I'm hitting some of these 4 to 6, 7 yard passing concepts to try to get Cade McNamara in a rhythm early. I know you're going to want to just do what you're really good at, and that's run the football and get Kaleb Johnson going. But I think you need a little bit of a balance in this football game. If they can get that short passing game going early, I think that's going to open up some things in the run game. Now, I think Ohio State has the Jimmies and the Joes to be able to adjust as this game goes along. Also, I don't know if they're going to play soft coverage. I think they're going to play tighter coverage. And I don't think there's much of a fear that the Hawkeyes, whether it's receivers getting open over the top or whether it's Cade McNamara making those throws over the top, I don't think there's a lot of fear in that as well in this particular football game. Let's move on to my second point, and this is Buckeye big players. We are so used to big plays being made in this Ohio State offense, but I think Ohio State is going to look to hit some big plays early in this particular football game, because when you look at Iowa's defense, it's a little bit complicated, I think, when it comes to their pass defense. Statistically, they are second in the Big Ten right now in pass defense, which is, hey, that's pretty good, right, when you're taking on an Ohio State team with the wide receivers that they do. But this is an Iowa team that has given up big plays over the top this season. There were a couple of big scoring plays against Iowa State that cost the Hawkeyes the game. There were big plays made in that game against Troy where the Trojans were able to keep on scoring in that game at Kinnick Stadium. And then I look at the receivers and I look at the talent that Ohio State has, and you look at the matchups with some of these corners, Jamari Harris on one side and TJ Hall. I think that this is an Ohio State team that is going to look to throw the ball early and often in this game to be able to strike those big plays down the field, because we know Ohio State has a tremendous run game. We know about the three-headed monster, and I think Iowa's secondary is certainly very good, but when you look at the front seven of Iowa, I think that they have a really good front seven, and they're going to try to dedicate resources to try to slow down this run game early on. They have one of the best linebacker tandems in the country. They have an extremely deep defensive line. If I'm Ohio State, I'm attacking the perimeter. I know I've got maybe the best receiver in college football in Jeremiah Smith out there. I am getting him the football, and I am letting him eat. Because if I can hit these explosive plays early in this game, and I can go ahead 14-0 after the first quarter, and I can go ahead 17-3 after or sometime middle of the second quarter or something like that, where does that put Iowa? Now all of a sudden, they got to be able to throw the ball to try to get back into this game. They have to be able to get that pass game going, to get quicker offense down the field, to be able to keep up. And now they go away from the best part of their offense and the best part of their team, and that's the run game. Now for Iowa, in order to disrupt some of those big plays, I think that this defensive line needs to have a big-time day. Of course, there were some question marks maybe coming into the season for Ohio State up front on the offensive line. So can Iowa take advantage of that? Can they get Will Howard out of a rhythm? Can they shrink the pocket? Can they shorten the time that Will Howard has back there? Because some of these longer developing routes is what Emeka Egbuka wants to get to down the field, what Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate, they want to get to down the field as well. So if they can do that and maybe disrupt the timing of this passing game, maybe that's something Iowa can do. And then if they come to the box and contain the run game, that could be a way, along with running the football and being effective in the play action game like they talked about before, that could be a way for Iowa to remain close. Because I think the key for the Hawkeyes is to remain, just get this game to a one-possession game in the fourth quarter, right? That typical Kirk Ferentz type of game, and then let's just make the plays down the stretch. Let's make key plays in key moments, and then we'll see what happens. But I think when we kind of unpack this thing a little bit and we really look at this thing realistically, after we break down everything, sometimes you can talk about X's and O's until you're scarlet and gray or black and gold in the face. But sometimes you just got to put the X's and the O's to the side and you got to talk about the Jimmies and the Joes. We talk about Iowa dragging teams down and playing their style of play, but I think this Ohio State they're just too talented. They're just too talented right now. I find it hard to believe where Iowa can consistently play that style of play with a team like Ohio State for multiple quarters, like going into the second half. Maybe they could keep it close in the first half, but going mid-third quarter, start of the fourth quarter, I think Ohio State certainly has just too much talent in this game. But like we said, if Iowa wants to do it, they need to shorten the game. They need to limit possessions. And I think a big part of this is they need to try to create turnovers. Okay, Will Howard had that interception in the first half against Michigan State. I think Ohio State gave Michigan State opportunities in that first half to keep this game closer than it was. But Michigan State turned the football over themselves, and they weren't able to score as often as they would like. Iowa needs to find a way to, one, create those opportunities with their defense, and then on offense being able to finish to be able to stay in that football game. We'll see if it can happen. Let's get to my prediction in this particular football game. I think Ohio State wins. I think Ohio State covers. I've got the Buckeyes winning 34-10 in this particular matchup as well. Like I said before, I just think that there's too much talent. I think Ohio State is going to come out fairly motivated because now you're starting to get into the meat of the schedule. I think they want to prove the week before that Oregon game that this is a machine that is certainly humming going forward. I want to hear what you guys think. All things score predictions for the Hawkeyes and the Buckeyes in the comments below. I'm Big Ten Ted. We will see you in the next one.
Thanks for watching Big Ten Ted, where it's all Big Ten all year long. Make sure to like the video to spread the word of Big Ten Ted to the masses, and subscribe to the channel for updates on Big Ten content that drops every day.